Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Homesteads and Homeschools. This is episode number 59, which means you can find the show notes for today's show at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/059. For the most part, this is an apolitical show. I may have some guests on that have particular bents here and there, but for the most part, we're kind of talking about growing your own stuff and teaching your own kids. And if that happens to have a political bent to it, well, so be it. But today's show is going to be a little bit different. It is the season in which libertarians decide on who their presidential nominee will be. And they make that decision in early May. My guest today is seeking the presidential nomination from the Libertarian Party, and that is Mr. Mark Whitney. And the reason I had him on, I think most of the Libertarian nominees would be kind of interesting to talk to when it comes to school. They look at small government, and I think most would be opposed to the national standards and Department of Education that currently exists. But I had Mark on today to talk about his experience homeschooling his son. They have two kids, as you'll see, and we'll get into that in the show. That was mostly why I wanted to have him on, and we talked a little bit at the end about what he kind of envisions for education on a national scale, where the federal government fits into education. But before we get to the show, I just want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, because you're slackers if you haven't, and I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed. I don't know what kind of homeschooling parent you think you are if you are not able to subscribe to a podcast. It's that simple. How are you supposed to be keeping up on all that other stuff you're doing? And head over to homesteadsandhomeschools.com/Amazon for the affiliate link. And of course, if you feel so inclined, patreon.com/thelibertyhippie, and get some bonus content there, some stickers, some seeds, some other paraphernalia I got laying around here, waiting to get in your greedy little hands, or benevolent little hands, whatever your hands may be. Maybe they're big hands, I don't know. But all right, let's get down to it. Let's go plant those liberty seeds, Mr. Mark Whitney.
The bottom's packed with cocky girls, selling frocks and shining pearls. Lick my fingers, ladies swoon, the hottest dancer in the room. I'm a bad boy and I need to dance. If I don't dance, there's no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. First dance is always free. Bad boy and I need to dance. If I don't dance, there's no romance. Feel like dancing, dance with me. First dance is always free.
My guest today, if you follow libertarian politics at all, you'll know his name. But he is running for the nomination for the Libertarian president there, and he's here today. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. And he just did a big long Ask Me Anything. So Mr. Mark Whitney, thank you for coming on. Welcome to the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
So I like to start back at the beginning. I know you grew up in Vermont, right?
Correct. I was born in Rhode Island, but by the time I was in the first grade, we were in Vermont. So I went through elementary school and high school in Rutland County, Vermont, which is where they keep Killington.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Rutland's now it's a I don't want to say it's a decent sized city, but it's not your little podunk Northeast Kingdom towns. Where did you go? Was it a bunch of kids?
So if you're saying Northeast Kingdom, you know Vermont. How do you know Vermont? I
grew up in upstate New York, outside of Saratoga, and lived in Vermont for a few years.
So I actually went to school in Brandon, Vermont, at Otter Valley. Yeah. President of the Student Council, 1977. Won in a landslide.
If they only knew what they were setting you up for.
I know. It's crazy.
So I'm guessing it was fairly small back. It's still small now, so it was pretty small back then. Did you have school choice back then, or what did you do for high school?
I went through K through 6 at Brandon Elementary School in Brandon, Vermont. I went 7 through 12 at Otter Valley Union High School. It's one of these schools where you need, 6 or 7 towns to make a school. So there are about 900 kids in that school at the time. Today is about 450. Vermont is the oldest state in the country per capita because it is the most anti-capitalist state. So there's no commerce there. And I don't want to get off track, but 40% of the revenue in Vermont comes from taxes paid on dividends. So you have a lot of people with a lot of money there, and then you have a lot of people with no money. So that's Vermont.
That was one of the things. It's a beautiful place, but that was one of the things I remember living there that kind of chased us out a little bit. But
yeah.
Did you like? How was your public school experience? Was it a good one, a bad one? Anything you remember?
The thing I remember most is high school. Well, actually, you know what? The best thing about elementary school for me was that I was an altar boy at the Catholic church in town. So whenever anybody died and there was a funeral and they were Catholic, like I would, starting like in the second grade, I would follow the obituaries and I would look for Catholics in my town that died because I knew I was going to get to ride my bike across town about 2 miles to the Catholic church. I was going to do the funeral mass. I was going to get dragged out to the graveyard. Someone's going to give me $5. And then on the way back to school, I'm going to stop at Brown's Pharmacy and get a hot fudge sundae. And by the time all that happens, there's no school. So, you know, can you imagine, right? And so that went on really through all the way through the 6th grade. Can you imagine, you know, these days, you know, if you let your kid bike across town from the school to the church to do a funeral mass, they would take your kids away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, they would, no doubt. And God forbid you make a little bit of money at that age under the table like that. Ooh, forget it.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic because the only time I saw money at that age was when we went down to Rhode Island to visit my mother's family. And, you know, she came from an Irish Catholic family, and there's always like that one relative that has a wallet full of money, you know. They don't really have money, but they got a wallet full of cash and they give you $5. And that's like an ocean of money, and you can buy all this penny candy with it at the store and popcorn at the beach, and that was fantastic. My Aunt Alice, she was the one that had the money in her wallet.
Nice.
Yeah. She didn't have money, but she had money in her wallet, and she gave it to us.
Hey, guess whatever works. So you, at some point along the line, then you ended up in California. Is that where? I know from following the campaign and whatnot. Yeah. You have 2 boys that are older now, right? They're in their
32 and 35, my sons, and we moved to California at age 40, which I like to say for us was the age of reason. That's when we reached the age of reason, and got out of New England. I started a company called I was a co-founding member of a company in 1996 in Hanover, New Hampshire called Ayers. And that was a company that actually, recruited candidates, which is what I'm offering to do for the Libertarian Party. And people just hate me. They just hate me. I don't know what the deal is. But you know what? They're a bunch of, you know, the Lion King. You know the Lion King? You know the Lion King?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's Mufasa. And then there's Scar.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then there's all these hyenas that are always around. These people are hyenas. What is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? You come in and you go, look, I'm devoting my 60s to helping this party. The culture is upside down. You're a bunch of losers. You don't get anybody elected. You're dysfunctional. You're codependent. You virtue signal. You chant principles. You don't know anything about anything. You just chant. And I'm going to blow this up, and I'm going to make it my own, or I'm going to start what the party should be on my own, you know, one or the other. So it's I'm either going to fix what's there, which is easier than starting a separate party, or I'm going to start a separate party. And depending on whether Austin gets it right, there may be 2 libertarians running for president this year. The one they nominate and me.
All right. Well, see how that goes. That's
and I'll get more votes than whoever they nominate based on the people running.
Yeah.
Because I actually understand the job, because I understand these documents, and you know, I just got a message for people. The Libertarian National Platform is not the document that the president takes the oath to uphold. Mm-hmm. It's the Constitution. And those documents overlay a lot. But if all you've mastered is that platform, you are incompetent to apply for the job of president. You are incompetent. So get off the stage.
Is that an interesting take on that? I have not quite thought of it.
It's actually based on a true story, because if you've seen an inauguration, okay, the person who wins the election raises their hand and they swear to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution, not the platform of a political party. The reason I'm a libertarian is because the Libertarian Party is extracted from the founding documents. That's where it comes from. It's a political organization that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So, just the order of things.
Fair enough.
Like, we discovered freedom. No, you didn't. You're an idiot. You're a moron. You didn't discover freedom.
Discovering, personal liberties and rights, discovering that.
The personal liberties are inherent. Yeah, they're natural. You didn't discover them. You were born with them. Mm-hmm. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's it.
So why make this charismatic Gregorian chant out of it? I don't get that at all. Okay, if it's natural, then what the fuck?
Yeah, no, I think it kind of fits the time. It's more the time. Everybody's doing it, and it's that's the nature of.
Yeah, everybody is on social media.
At this point.
Everyone's on social media, virtue signaling to their friends. It's like, oh, I would never call Jacob a bad name. I'm so virtuous. I don't use words like that. I don't even associate with people who use words like that. It's terrible. I hate Dave Chappelle, who says that word every 5 seconds. I hate Chris Rock, who says that word every 5 seconds. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those people aren't popular. Oh, no.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
But so your boys...
I'm ruining your relationships in the party right now, aren't I?
Well, it's okay. No, I don't. I try not to be too. Like, I'm not. I don't understand. Like, I just don't care. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. We break it down to this team stuff, and
you know what? That's a smart thing you just said, because why should you care? Because the way they treat the presidential election is like an administrative task. You get some people that chant back some principles like monkeys. You give them a banana. You go to a national convention, and you nominate someone who's politically irrelevant and has no ability to bring talent and charisma or any kind of fire to getting on the debate stage. So you're politically irrelevant, and there's an opportunity this year to not be that. Yeah,
there's an opportunity last go around as well. So it's kind of we'll see. But so your boys are in their 30s now, and they are fairly successful, I would say, right? Is that
They're very successful. They were both financially independent before they were 35. My family is we are a large L libertarian family. All of the money, I've got a little cold. All of the money that my family has earned has been entirely from the private sector, 100% of it. And with the exception of this one company I started in my 20s where I borrowed money, all of our companies are bootstrapped from cash flow. So as a result of my experience with losing a company in my 20s, financial literacy is what defines the culture of my family. If I had to pick one thing, so don't spend $1 you don't have. Keep your nose out of other people's business. And when you are, especially my youngest son, Chris, who created this enormous Amazon store, $15 million at its peak. What he did every month is he rolled his own money over every month. So every month he put every dollar that came in at risk. And for the first 7 or 8 years that he had that company, he drove a 10-year-old Hyundai Elantra that we got when he was 16. All the money got rolled over. Because Chris is really the king of retail arbitrage. That's what he is. And so he's really a commodities trader. That's what you are if you have an Amazon store in many cases. And so every month he puts all that money at risk. He didn't sit around like a hyena in his bathtub, castigating presidential candidates on Facebook, right? As libertarian as a verb, right? If you got that kind of time on your hands, you're a loser.
Yeah, it is.
You're a loser.
It is a verb. So now, Chris, was he homeschooled? Did you homeschool him for a little bit, or did he finish out public school, or how did that work?
Yeah, so Chris is autistic, and so he went to public school until he was in about the 4th grade. It wasn't really a thing that was working that well for him. Chris was also a champion competitive figure skater, and he used to wear a shirt to the rink that said, "If figure skating was easy, they'd call it hockey." And I said, you're going to be in the dumpster down there someday. But the fact of the matter is, he could skate rings around the hockey players. When he went out on the rink with the hockey players, he'd just whip around them. And in fact, a former world champion, Michael Weiss, former world champion of figure skating in the United States, who was the first person to land a quadruple jump, he makes his living now teaching hockey players how to skate. That's what he does. Nice. And so Chris, so there were 2 reasons that we decided to homeschool. One was he was autistic. It wasn't really the best setting for him because he has these incredible strengths and these incredible weaknesses. So the homeschooling allowed us to manage to his strengths. Right. And one of his strengths and aptitudes was figure skating. The other strength and aptitude he had when he was like 12 was he really became, it was right around that, it was the same week that John F. Kennedy flew his plane into the ocean, John F. Kennedy Jr. off of Block Island. Chris was fascinated by that all week. He couldn't get enough of the coverage. And at the end of the week of watching a week of plane crash coverage, he looked up and said, "I want to fly airplanes." And that was what he took away from that, right? So he became this, he was like a really good pilot. And so with Chris, it was really important to, here's the thing I think that happens with a lot of parents. A lot of parents are like the people on the Facebook page heckling me like a bunch of hyenas. They're worried about what other people say about them and think about them. So they impose a lot of stress on their kids. So we lived in Hanover, New Hampshire, which, if you know the area, is that's where Dartmouth College is. So everybody that lives in Hanover, New Hampshire, and in Norwich, Vermont, across the river, for people who don't know, Hanover's a town of 7,000 people. Norwich is a town of 3,000 people. And Norwich is in Vermont, Hanover's in New Hampshire. And so I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Rutland County, which is a real blue collar community. There might be 2 people from my high school that have gone to Ivy League schools. But over here, just over the mountain, an hour or so away. And my parents, by the way, never thought to maybe bring us over there. I didn't even know Dartmouth was there. I grew up in that area. And I get over there and I find out about Dartmouth on a high school band trip. I thought, well, this is nice. So we moved down there and lived there. I thought maybe some of those brain cells would rub off on me or my kids or something. And everybody that lives in these communities, they work for, most of them work for the 2 big nonprofits that employ everybody, which is Dartmouth College and the nearby hospital, Dartmouth Hitchcock. And these people, when the minute that they conceive, from the time that baby is conceived, before it's even out of the womb, they are programming that kid to go to an Ivy League school. And it is so preordained, and they're so concerned about it. They're concerned about it for 2 reasons. One is status, like Aunt Becky, who bribed a kid into USC. Aunt Becky has this 14-year-old kid who's this amazing entrepreneur who has 2 million followers on YouTube and puts makeup on better than anybody's ever put makeup on. And she's got contracts with all the big makeup companies. This kid doesn't need college. This kid knows what she's doing. She shows up twice a week and makes these videos, and she's just killing it. But Aunt Becky needs to virtue signal to the people in her community that her daughter got into a good college. So she bribes her into college because she doesn't like the people in Hanover. They don't have it's not that they don't have confidence in their kids. They don't have confidence in themselves. They don't have confidence in themselves as parents. That's where that comes from. So there's a status piece, but there's also this mentality that there's this single path, and if they could just get their kid on this path, then they can relax. Then they can relax because they don't want to worry about their kid. Yeah, I wasn't like that. I always had confidence in myself as a parent and as a father. And my two sons are very different. My oldest son is like my wife. And so they do very well by the structured seminar that public school is. It kind of works for them, right? But Chris and I are different. We don't think that way. It doesn't really work for us. We're very good working from a blank piece of paper. We can use our creativity and our imagination to imagine how things would be if we took certain steps, but we're not committed to the outcome. We know we need to be flexible as we go. But my oldest son and my wife very much benefit from the structure. So I think my point is, based on my experience, if you just have confidence in yourself as a parent and you're showing up and you're doing the right thing, that your kids are going to find their way in the world, and you don't have to bribe them into college and go to prison. It's so much easier.
Yeah,
no
doubt about that. So did your older son, you guys did not homeschool him? You kept him in the public school system?
No, he was, my older son was more like having a cat. He was just kind of independent from the fourth grade. He got himself up, he got dressed, he got himself to school, walked to school, rode his bike to school. Even in the winter, he had his bike tires studded and he rode to school.
It's cold.
And he's always been very independent, very self-sufficient. And he just kind of killed at it. When he was 16, he started working full time, and he hasn't stopped working full time. He went through USCSD in 3 years, got his master's, all while working full time. And he's just, he's one of these people that's just like my wife, very task driven. And so he's always like a top student. He's fluent in French, and I call him a Renaissance redneck. He's fluent in French and knows how to fix a car.
Nice.
So yeah.
So did you guys? How was that homeschooling then with your younger son and dealing with the?
It worked out really well. We were able to take advantage of all the ice time that was available in the area when the hockey players weren't using it, and his coach was able to work with him. And my mom actually did the homeschooling. She was a chapter 1 teacher. And so she got involved with that. Chris and her have a very good relationship, and my mom is still alive. She's in her mid 80s. And, about 10 years ago, Chris just started sending my mom $1,000 a month just because he wanted to. He's been doing that. I mean, he sent her over $100,000 in the last 10 years, probably. And just because he just one day he said, this is something I think I should do. And he just started doing it,
That's awesome.
Good boy.
That's cool. So how, both your kids have that entrepreneurial side. Is that something you feel like you instilled in them? Is that something that they just kind of had, or what? How did that come about? What do you think?
That's the culture of our family, and it's very much rooted in the First Amendment, which that set of rights that we secured for ourselves. It invites us to create companies and create ways of earning a living. It invites us to just live large, and in my opinion, if you can somehow get yourself to a point where you got a little mom and pop business that's doing $1 million a year and throwing off a couple $100,000, and it's not something that makes you have to, show up between 9 to 5. Boy, it's hard to come up with a better way to live than that. For all the complaining we libertarians do about the government, this is a great country. There's a great infrastructure in place. Adam Kokesh talks about, getting people to rally around blowing up the government. People don't even want to blow up TSA. I mean, the reason we have TSA is because it doesn't piss people off enough. That's why it's there. Ultimately, we the people are responsible for everything. And that's why I decided to run for president. I'm like, I got to stop complaining and criticizing. I had a podcast late night last week, very big, popular show. And I just got to the point where I go, I'm going to just get in the game, and I'm going to put my money and my time where my heart is, and see if we can, disturb the universe a little bit and wake people up.
Shake it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm curious, and if where do you see the federal government in education? Is it someplace they will?
I don't think the federal government should have any role in education. I think that I was talking to Judge Gray about this up in California. I put a little video clip of us talking about this, and I asked him. I said, Jim, would you agree with me that the word education should be the most liberally construed term in all of the English language? And he said, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I really believe that. And so the problem when you take an authoritarian approach to defining anything is that once you define it, you limit it. Mm-hmm. You limit it. So, and that is especially true when the definition is from the public sector, from the government. It has a tremendous psychological effect because that is now an official, quote unquote, official definition. So this is what education is. We're going to put that in a box. This is education. And what Bernie Sanders is proposing is to define the word even more narrowly than it is already narrowly defined. That's what he's proposing. He's proposing the same with healthcare when he talks about single payer. So if the government, even though the private sector is providing the healthcare, if the government holds the purse strings and controls the purse strings, there's going to be a whole array of federal statutes, rules, and regulations that define and regulate everything, and down to the smallest detail, they write this crap up. And it is so limiting to entrepreneurism. It discourages people because they go, God damn, I gotta comply with all this crap. I'm a smart person. I've got a nice life. Why would I want to? I've got my choice between, anything I want to do. I'm smart. I went to a top school. I've got advanced degrees. Why would I want to go into this healthcare thing? Why would I want to do that? When I go to the doctor, my physician is, she's about 28 or 30. She's fairly new out of med school. And she doesn't even look at me when I'm there. She spends her whole time transcribing what I'm saying.
Yep.
Like she's not a doctor. She's a stenographer. And she doesn't like it that way. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to take care of the patient, but she can't.
Yeah. I think that's the same way with public schools now. You see a lot of that happening, right? Like, and who sticks around, right? The people that you don't necessarily want there, that really don't belong there. They're just there for the paycheck and, but so would you break it down to?
Yeah, but I think you would have a lot more people wanting to spend time teaching children if the government I'm kind of like I'm not like get the government out of education. Mm-hmm. All government out of education. That is a nice aspiration to have, but I think you can express fealty for the libertarian principles we all agree in, but you can also have a foot in reality. And the reality is that it took a while for us to get where we are. So it takes a minute to get out. But a little state like Vermont, right, is a place where there's 500,000 people, and you can actually influence people there. Like everybody who lives in Vermont, like literally knows Bernie. They know the governor. They're friends. They see each other all the time at stuff. And your state legislatures. You go to dinner with them. They're in your town. And so you can influence that, and you can say, hey, maybe this is fine for 75% of the people, but 25% is still a big chunk. And you got parents out there who would just like to be responsible mm-hmm. for educating their own children. And that is ultimately the most responsible parent who's willing to make that type of commitment to their kid, where they want to actually create their own environment, whether they're doing it directly or indirectly or part-time or full-time. So they're putting a lot of their own initiative and creativity in it, and ultimately you're going to end up with more people who look at the world in an individualistic way, and that just benefits society in ways that are intangible and wonderful.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's part of one of the bigger issues with it right now is that you pass all these, this Common Core, all these standards from one central point in this massive country and expect it to be the same for everybody. And you got to break it down a little bit to the to a smaller scale. But
right. Have you seen my show Fool for a Client?
I started it, and I was gonna.
Yeah. So there's a thing in there where I talk about this $1 billion government program called the Walking School Bus, a program designed to teach kids that walking to school can be just as safe as the real school bus. That's literally the program. And so in these small towns, they get the local police, and he fires it like Barney Fife. He turns the lights on, and then they pick up the first kid, and then they walk to the next house. The next kid comes out, and they line up. And then it's like, just let them walk to school. I think you have to be willing to take a risk with your kids. I think the best parents are willing to lose their kids. You put a little bit of risk in there, and it makes things a lot more. You understand things a little bit more, and I think it brings out a well-rounded kid more so than the kid that's wrapped in bubble tape and doesn't know what hits them when they need to actually do something. Self-reliance, right? Self-reliance, being accountable to yourself. If you're not self-reliant and you're not accountable to yourself, then it is impossible for you to engage and participate meaningfully in self-government, in any of the things that the Constitution Bill of Rights stand for. We own this government. We sit and complain about it, but we don't take responsibility for it.
Yeah, I think it kind of cuts both ways a little bit. We have responsibility. I think we're almost to the point where it's just, I don't know. Is there a way out? Are we so entrenched in what we have? Can we dial it back?
There is a way out. There is. And it starts with a libertarian president. It doesn't start from the bottom up. It starts with a libertarian president. You take the most constitutional office and the most libertarian office in the country. It is the office of the president. It is the job that aligns. If it is done in a constitutional way, which it hasn't been for a long time, if it is done in a constitutional way, it aligns very nicely with the Libertarian Party national platform, and the messaging. Presidents are able to assign ideas. So if you're assigning ideas related to individual autonomy, as opposed to ideas related to institutional authority, well, then you're doing a great job as president.
Good deal. Well, I wish you luck. Thank you for coming on. If people want to find out more about you and your platform, I know you have your website out there with those wonderful YouTube videos. Right. I love that. That was great. But where can we go to find all that stuff? Find out about you.
Thanks. So markwhitney.com. And one of the things we're focused on right now is qualifying for the debate in Texas. So Texas is going to put 4 candidates on the stage. I'm currently in number 2 in fundraising. So the Libertarian Party in Texas is like the candidates who raise the most money for our party get on the stage. So they're kind of auctioning off 4 debate places. That's what they're doing. So I'm number 2, and I want to go down to Texas having out fundraised that Mother Jacober. So if people want to support me, one of the best things they can do is just shoot me an email, mark@markwhitney.com. I'll give you the link, that Texas debate link, and you can deposit up to $100 in support of me being on that debate stage down there.
All right. I don't know. I did not know that's how they were doing it. I know you mentioned
they're having an auction. That's what they're doing. Yeah.
Good deal. I know you mentioned Fool for a Client. It has done well, and it looks good. And
yeah,
I
put Fool for a Client up on YouTube for the first time about 10 days ago or so, something like that. It's had like 15,000 views. Yeah, people like it.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well,
and people are like, why can't you be more like that Fool for a Client guy? I'm like, I will be. I just got to blow some shit up first.
Yeah, well,
just got to blow some shit up.
Yeah, so Mark Whitney, I enjoyed talking to him. He's a good guy, and brings up some interesting points, and and I really appreciated the this idea of a culture of entrepreneurialism, and I've heard him say it before that can't wasn't a word that existed in their vocabulary. It wasn't something that was prevalent in their conversations with each other as a family. It's amazing when you think about what words mean, what they do, and if you just don't recognize that you can't do something or that it's something is impossible, that's not an option. Not doing something is not an option. You figure out how to do it and you stick to it and you do it. And I just really appreciate that. Also, go check out Fool for a Client. I did finally wrap up watching Fool for a Client. Hard to find time, but I did do it, and you should do it as well. It is enjoyable. So at the end of the show, we talked about Mark getting into the debate at Texas and that little pay-to-play auction that they have going on there. I'm not sure the details behind it. I have heard some talk that they were trying to raise funds for some cause or another. I'm not entirely sure about, but anyway, that's what is there. And so yeah, Mark will be there. I believe he won. His jar received the most donations, if you will. So he will be there, and it should be a fun watch. And I encourage you guys, if you're all interested, go check that out. These debates are curious events for sure. If you enjoyed today's show and you're curious about the libertarian end of things, you want to hear more of that, come back in 2 weeks. My guest will be Mr. John Mons, who is also running for nomination for the presidential ticket in the Libertarian Party. Such a mouthful of words, that phrasing. Anyway, he is coming on in 2 weeks and telling his story about homeschooling, their homeschooling adventure, and where he sees the federal government's role in education. Until then, I encourage you all to get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap sheaves of freedom together. Dream.